Hello everyone, it's Run the NBA back with another off-season preview video. Here today we're going to be talking about the Utah Jazz and what could be a bit more of an interesting off-season than some people think. Of course, the most notable thing is Mike Conley being a free agent. There's been some mutual interest expressed that he wants to come back and Utah would like to bring him back. It's all going to depend on the term and the money that he wants and what Utah want to give him. But it's also worth noting that Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell's extensions kick in this upcoming season. And so before they even re-sign Mike Conley, they already have $134 million in committed payroll on the team. And so it's very possible that they could look to move on from some salaries if they do look to bring back Mike Conley. As you saw, being a smaller market team, don't give the impression to me that they are likely to want to dip too heavy into the luxury tax. And that's something that they might have to do if Mike Conley is re-signed. And so it's quite possible we don't see the full Utah Jazz team that we saw this past season be back for the upcoming season. And so that's something we're going to be talking about within this video. And so briefly, I just want to recap their last season. And of course, it was a very good, surprising season in the regular season for the Utah Jazz. I don't think many people would have expected them to be as good as they were last season. I certainly didn't, and to be completely honest, I think if anyone told you that they expected them to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference, you can just assume that they're lying to you, generally speaking. Because this came out of nowhere. Utah have been a good team in the West for multiple years now, there's no doubt about that. Donovan Mitchell has been a force, and they have been a very good team out West. But this is not a team that screamed all of a sudden they were just going to take this massive leap and become the best regular season team in the league. But that's what they did. It fit together. Mike Conley had a much better year too, and finally made an all-star appearance. Rudy Gobert continued his good play. Jordan Clarkson had one of his better seasons, if not his best season of his career, being in the sixth-man conversation for the whole season from start to finish, starting off extremely hot especially. Joe Ingles played well. Royce O'Neal had an extremely good season, arguably the best season of his career, and Donovan Mitchell continued to improve. Jordan Niang played well. It was just a really good fit, and the team shot as a whole just extremely well from three-point range. It's essentially what it boils down to. This is a team that just figured it out from the three-point line throughout the season, and they never stopped. They just kept firing at high rates and firing at high rates, and they were just very successful at it. And that was ultimately the biggest reason for the success, along with a team that just had great ball movement and player movement, that had great chemistry together, which lended to why they shot the three so well, because they had so much good open shots. And with the defense anchored by Rudy Gobert at the rim, they were one of the better defensive teams in the league, as they typically are. And it was just a great combination for success in the regular season. Now, of course, the playoffs didn't quite go as they would have wanted. They're still lacking a bit of top and talent and perimeter scoring, shot creating talent outside of Donovan Mitchell, as far as I'm concerned, for a deep playoff run. But nonetheless, this was still a very successful season by Utah. But unfortunately, what could be their best season that they ever end up having within this group? Within the Donovan Mitchell era? Not necessarily. Donovan Mitchell is still only 24, but within this current group of players, with Joe Ingles, with Bogdanovich, with Jordan Clarkson, this could be the best year they have. Throw Mike Conley in that discussion as well. And the reason for that is I find it very hard to believe that they're going to be able to retain everyone for next season, or not necessarily that they're able to, but that they're willing to, because they definitely can. They can re-sign Mike Conley and they can just run it back. But I have hesitancies that they're going to be willing to do that and go that heavy into the luxury tax. Of course, the most difficult part of their salary concerns moving into the summer is the fact that Mike Conley does have to get re-signed. He was getting paid $34.5 million this previous season, and if he gets re-signed at the same type of figure, that puts the Utah Jazz at about $170 million in committed cap spending for next summer, which puts them at one of the highest payroll teams in the league, and going to be paying out a handsome fee in the luxury tax. And I don't know if that's something that Utah are going to be willing to do. I have hesitancies that they will. Now, they haven't expressed any doubt that they want to bring back Mike Conley, but I struggle to believe that this is going to be a franchise that's going to dip that heavily into that tax. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see him run it back and not trade anyone, but I wouldn't be shocked to see one of Favors, Ingles, Clarkson, or Bojan Bogdanovic being traded this summer. Bojan Bogdanovic has 2 more years left at 18.7 and 19.5. Jordan Clarkson has 3 more years at 12.4 next year. Joe Ingles has 1 more year at 14 million next year, and Favors has 2 more at 9.7 next year. All on significant deals that could be moved if they do bring back Mike Conley to try and lower the pay bill. Now, if they don't bring back Mike Conley, I don't think this is a concern. I think they run it back. Now, obviously, the point guard spot's going to be an issue, so they will still want to acquire a point guard, assuming they don't want Jordan Clarkson to be the starter, and they don't want Donovan Mitchell to be the de facto point guard. But nonetheless, it's not going to be as expensive as Mike Conley, and at that point, they might be a little bit more comfortable sitting at that point on the salary cap. But if they bring back Mike Conley at 25, 30 million, they're going to be 106, 165, 170 million in payroll, and that's when I would expect some moves could be made. As far as I see this offseason goes for the Utah Jazz, I think Mike Conley does get re-signed. I think we probably do see a trade out of one of their guys. I know Royce O'Neal's probably also someone that could be mentioned, just based on a salary perspective, that he is getting paid $8.67 million and is under contract for another 3 years. But I think he's the least likely of those guys to be traded, as much as maybe he isn't at the same skill level per se as Bojan Bogdanovic or some of the other guys on that list that was named. I think Royce O'Neal's wing defense for this team is just so invaluable, and something that is just, it's something that is so valuable to this team that I don't think that they're going to be willing to give him up. I think he's on one of the better value contracts in the league on that deal for his spacing and his very elite wing defense. I think that's something that they're definitely going to hold on to. But I think someone gets traded. I think Joe Ingles and Bojan Bogdanovic could definitely make sense. Bojan Bogdanovic is on the biggest deal significantly, nearly at 19 million, and so it would make sense to move on from him in that regard. And Joe Ingles only has 1 year left, and so he's probably the most easily tradable at only 14 million for the next year, and at age 33. Bojan Bogdanovic at age 32. They're the pieces out of the oldest that fit the Donovan Mitchell timeline the least, and so those are some of the guys that I would expect to see moved this summer if Mike Conley is resigned, which I think he will be. Now, if Mike Conley isn't resigned, I expect everyone will stay. They'll try and acquire a cheap point guard, and they'll move on from there. But however, regardless of how you look at this Utah team, I don't think they're a top seed in the West next year. They're definitely not a #1 seed. I think they'll push in and around the 3, 4, 5, 6 seed range again, which they normally do. I think they'll be in and around that range. But ultimately, if everyone can be healthy moving into next season, and health and safety protocols are not as stringent next season as they hopefully and should not be, then ideally we should be in a scenario where the West is a lot more competitive. Of course, Kawhi Leonard's out for the year, but there's still going to be a lot of good teams again out West, assuming Chris Paul stays with Phoenix, and then even more so. And so, of course, it's hard to predict based on how teams are going to be with a lot of unknowns, but I would have to say that Utah are probably going to struggle to get that 1 seed. As I mentioned, they're probably going to be a 3 to 6 seed, and they're probably going to get ousted in the first round as long as everyone can stay healthy, which would be unfortunate. I'd love to see this Utah team do better, but that's just the way I see this Utah team right now. But they have a lot of offseason to figure out first, and Utah have a lot of offseason to figure out, most certainly. That being said, if you guys did enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think about this Utah Jazz team moving forward, and what you think they could and should do in this upcoming offseason. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.